Welcome to episode 2 of the Fit.Family podcast. In this podcast, we are going to talk about fitness, family, parenting, nutrition, all that kind of stuff. This podcast is focused at new lifters, people new into either parenting or getting into working out, they've been working out, but maybe they've just started a family, so now they're trying to figure out how to implement it, all of those kind of things. But we are going to start today's podcast off by talking about nutrition. Episode 2 is going to focus a lot more on nutrition. Episode 1, we focused a lot more on giving you the basics of how to work out in the gym, how to structure your workouts, what types of exercises to look at, motions, things like that, what progressive overload is. So if you're interested in that, go back and watch episode 1. If you are interested more in the nutrition side of things, or you want some help with that, then this is the podcast for you. First thing I want to talk to you about is I'm going to break this podcast into 2 sections. First one, we'll be talking about just strictly losing weight, hopefully body fat, and gaining muscle. And second part is I'm going to talk about how to eat healthy. And there's a big overlap in these, but they are 2 separate categories and ways of thinking about nutrition. Ideally, you'd be thinking of how to combine them. And there is a lot of combining. As you eat less calories, you will generally get healthier, even if the food you're not eating isn't super healthy. It's not the most optimized health, but generally you will get healthier as you control your calories. Same thing with as you try to eat healthier, you're probably going to be eating less calories, and so your weight will probably go down, and you'll probably go down to a healthy body fat percentage. So there is a lot of overlap in that, but there are still 2 categories as far as thinking through everything. When we are losing weight and thinking about that, it basically boils down to the concept of calories in, calories out. And what do I mean by that? First, we have to think about our maintenance calories. And what is maintenance calories? So maintenance calories is the amount of calories you can eat so that you do not gain weight. So having your maintenance calories and knowing what your maintenance calories is very, very important. Because if you eat over your maintenance calories, you will gain weight. If you eat under your maintenance calories, you're going to lose weight. So knowing that concept in your head is very, very essential in your nutrition and in your goal to lose weight or gain weight if you're trying to gain muscle. So, how do you figure out your maintenance calories? My method is go online, look up a calorie calculator, figure out and put in, it's going to ask for basic things like height, weight, gender, how active you are, things like that. Just put in your best guess of how active you are, most accurate response. Put in, all the other metrics or all of the other information, and it's going to spit out a number. Now, this number, do not take this number and assume this is your maintenance weight. It is probably not correct. It is extremely hard because everybody's different. It's really hard to figure out what some people consider as active and what some people consider not. So it's really, really hard for a calculator to figure that out, knowing very little information about you. So you're just going to use this as a starting point. Eat that amount of calories, so track your calories, everything you consume. Food, liquid, sauces, everything. As accurately as you can. Don't go, nuts over it. But generally as accurate as you can, and weigh yourself every day. And track your weight for a week. At the end of the week, look at your weight as an overall picture. Don't look at one day to the next. Look at over that week, did I generally stay the same weight, within a pound of it, or within, roughly a pound? Did I increase weight? Did I decrease weight? Okay? If you want a better idea of it, you might want to increase this to 2 weeks. That'll give you a little bit of a clearer picture. But if you're time pressed, you can always do 1 week, and then you can constantly tweak from there. If you gained weight, you are obviously eating too much. So you need to decrease the amount of calories you are eating. And then opposite is obviously true. If you're losing weight, then you need to increase to find your maintenance. Then you need to figure out your goals. Once you feel like you've dialed in, so repeat that for a week if you need to adjust it, and basically do that until you find your maintenance calories. Once you find your maintenance calories, you've got to figure out your goal. Are you on the smaller side and you're trying to eat more to gain some muscle, gain some weight, or are you trying to lose weight? In which case you want to decrease your calories. When you're increasing or decreasing your calories, I do not recommend doing these massive bulks and cuts, meaning massive increases in calories or massive decreases in calories. I recommend a much slower approach. Your body will react to slow, consistent results way better than it will react to big results. Also, it will be much harder to maintain eating a massive amount of food or maintain eating a smaller calorie amount of food. It's going to be really hard to do that if you're doing an extreme of either of those. So ideally, you're going to keep yourself as close to maintenance calories as possible. Do a slight increase, 200-300 calories to gain weight, or a slight increase, 2 to 3 calories to gain weight, slight decrease of calories, about 200 to 300 decrease, and that's kind of the range I like to stay in. You can play with it, personalize it to yourself. Maybe, doing a 400 calorie difference works out better, but you generally want to think of it in that regard. It also would be a good idea to move more, especially if you're trying to lose weight. Moving more is going to cause you to burn more calories, which can easily change your weight. So focus on the diet in regards to losing weight, but adding in a little bit of cardio is a great idea to give you a little bit of a buffer. But don't think you're going to be able to lose a massive amount of weight just doing cardio, because you'd be surprised at how easy it is to cut out a little bit of calories versus increase the amount of cardio it would take to burn off those same amount of calories. So that concept of calories in versus calories out is basically thinking about your maintenance calories and how much you are burning and how much you are eating. So thinking of that maintenance calories, increase or decrease depending on your goals. I recommend weighing yourself either every day, every other day, more than once a week is what it comes down to, and looking at your weight as a bigger picture of how your weight is doing, because you can have little minor spikes in your weight, and that can be or drops. Same thing can happen with a drop, and then it'll go back up. And that can really unmotivate you, and can be a real big stumbling block to you if you're like, I ate really good, why am I up half a pound? Why am I up a pound? Well, you might not actually be up a pound. You maybe are retaining a lot more water. Maybe you didn't sleep well. There is about a million different things that could have caused you to increase weight. Maybe you gained muscle. There's so many things that you don't want to just look at the scale, and you especially don't want to just look at one weigh-in as a picture of what's going on in your body. So weigh yourself frequently, and then look at, and I would recommend writing it down either on your phone with a notebook near your scale or something, so you look back and be like, I have been generally this weight for 2 weeks, generally going down at this rate. This number seems off, so I'm just going to ignore it. It seems that's a pound higher than all of my other weights, so I'm just going to ignore it because it was obviously one of these other factors. Now, if you start getting that weight multiple times in a row, well, maybe you got to look at, are there foods I'm forgetting to track? Am I doing less calories? Do I need to adjust my maintenance? You can go back to the drawing board, try to adjust a couple of things, but don't do that based on one weight. Sometimes you also just hit plateaus, and so I recommend seeing a weight stay the same or increase for like 2 weeks. If it stays the same, maybe 2 weeks. If it's starting to go up, you might want to cut it off a little bit sooner. So maybe after a couple days of it consistently going up, as long as you think you're doing the same thing, maybe go back to the drawing board, double check that you're doing the same thing, and maybe even decrease your calories slightly. I mean, by 50 calories, 100 calories more, not by a lot. Next thing I want to talk about, now that we've talked about calories in, calories weight, maintenance, all of that kind of thing, is fad diets. And what do I mean by fad diets? You hear all the time, especially on social media, people are saying, these foods are making you fat, you need to cut these foods out of your body, or if you have struggled with weight loss, it's because you're not doing intermittent fasting, that's the key to your fat loss. All of these types of things. These are all fad diets. And what I want to say about fad diets is they're not necessarily a bad thing, but just remember that weight loss comes down to calories in, calories out. That's what's going to cause you to gain weight or lose weight, not what the calories are. So, Sam Solik, a famous bodybuilder, fitness influencer, said if your maintenance calories 2,000 and you eat 1,000 calories of donuts, you will lose weight. If you are eating 3,000 calories of rice and chicken and broccoli, but it's 3,000 calories, you are going to gain weight. So, while yes, it may not be a good idea to eat 1,000 calories of donuts, and that we will talk about more in how to stay healthy, it will cause you to lose weight. So, it doesn't really matter what calories you're eating, as long as your numbers are lower. Calories in, calories out. So fad diets focus on that thing, timing of your eating with intermittent fasting, all of those kind of things. Use these fad diets as techniques to help you lose weight. And try them out if you want to, but don't think that that diet is what is causing you to lose weight. It's the fact that you're in decreased calories. So if you see a fad diet that says cut out sugar from your diet and cut out, these food categories, well, that might help you because it'll help you eat in a calorie deficit, which is less than your maintenance calories, which will cause you to lose weight. It's not the fact that you're cutting those foods out, it's the fact that cutting those foods out are causing you to decrease your calories. Same thing with intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is when you skip a meal, you only eat during a certain period of time, so you only eat, a late lunch and an early dinner, and then you fast for the rest of the time. And so why is that helpful? Well, it's reducing the amount of time you can eat in, probably going to reduce the amount of calories, so it can be a helpful diet hack for you. Now, keep in mind that some people will overeat when they do something like intermittent fasting, so that's why I'm saying try it out, because intermittent fasting may not be for you. You may find that you are starving by the time you get to your eat window, and so you can't help but eat everything in sight, in which case you overeat. And for yourself, you find that if you eat throughout the day but smaller meals with less calories in them, that you can stay under your maintenance calories. Whereas other people may be like, I don't feel hungry, so reducing that, I like to eat bigger meals, so that works out better for me. Eating less, bigger meals, cutting out snacking, all of that helps for me. So that's why don't get hung up on these fad diets, but you can definitely use these fad diets as techniques and little cheats and methods to help you with the calories in, calorie out, eating in a calorie deficit to help you lose weight. So next thing we are going to talk about is macros. Now, macros are just, you can think of food in a couple different categories. So you can think of your food in, so you have carbs, you have fats, you have carbs, you have fats, and you have proteins, and you have fibers. It's kind of is a macro as well. So how do you think about your macros when it comes to losing weight? And this is starting to get into more of the health aspect of thinking about your calories, but it is also a little bit with gaining muscle. But we're starting to think a little bit more about health. My rule of thumb when it comes to macros is there's two numbers primarily that you need to track. And that is your calories overall, which is not a macro, but it's your calories, and it is your protein. And the reason I put protein higher is because of gaining muscle. Ideally, you're doing some kind of resistance training, and ideally, if you're losing fat, you're going to want to have some muscle underneath. So you don't want to lose the muscle, you want to lose the fat. If your weight goes down but you lose all muscle, well, you're still going to be a little bit more healthier, and you're still going to look fat, versus losing your fat, you're going to look healthier, and you're going to feel healthier, you're going to be healthier. So eating that protein is super, super helpful. Also, protein makes you feel very, very full and gives you longer lasting energy. So I wouldn't recommend only eating protein, but eating a higher amount of protein will definitely help you. Protein is also super good for, brain health, and brain energy and all of those type things. So track your protein. How much protein should you be eating? Well, a general rule of thumb is 0.8 to about a 0.8 to 1 grams of protein to 1 pound of lean body mass. So if you're already relatively lean, you can just use your body weight. If you're a little bit overweight, then you can, figure out what your lean mass would be and think about your ideal weight or what a healthy, BMI would be. Take a body fat percentage, figure out what your lean body mass should be, and go off that number. And that's generally the amount of food or of protein you should be eating a day. Now, I like thinking about it closer to the 1 gram per pound. As an easy number for me to figure out. I weigh 145 pounds. That means I need 145 grams of protein. Now, that's probably a little bit high. I like staying on this higher end for a couple of reasons. One, if I focus on my protein, then my calories tend to be a little bit lower, because in order to eat a lot of protein generally has less calories than fats and carbs. So by focusing on protein, I'm naturally keeping my calories down. Second is, if you focus on your protein and focus on a higher amount of protein, if by the end of the day you're not quite there, it gives you a buffer. So I'm probably overeating protein, so I don't get there every day. I don't have to, worry about it. I mean, what, I'm probably still in that 0.8 because I'm relatively close. I'm 10 grams off or whatnot. I'm still close enough for me to be hitting my daily protein. But you can figure out 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per body weight. Now, just because you look at calories and protein, and those are the two most important in my mind, carbs and fats and fibers are all extremely important as well. And what I try to do is I just try to, and I don't do this every day, I just look at it in a week. Generally, am I getting my about equal amounts of fiber, carbs, fats? Am I generally eating enough of a varied amount of those foods? Some people will say, you need to be eating exactly these numbers, and if you want to go that route, you can. For me personally, I have found that it doesn't really seem to matter that much, as long as you are not having no fiber, as long as you're having some fiber, having some carbs, having some fats. Some people feel better eating a little bit higher of a fat diet. Some people feel a little bit better eating higher carb diet. It kind of depends on the person. And when I say fats, I mean like good fats. So people think, oh, fat's bad, all this grease and stuff like that. When I think about fats, I'm more thinking like avocado fats, meat fats, so like steak, like the fat that's on steak, and chicken has less of it, but has a little bit of it on pork. Fish, things like that. It would have a little bit of fat. Eggs are another one. Those types of fats are really, really good for you. So when you think about fat, don't think, oh, it's all bad for you. When you think about carbs, remember, yes, bread is carbs, pasta is carbs, but rice and potatoes and those types of food are all carbs as well. So only thinking about everything in that the bad carbs and fats, well, there's also good carbs and fats. And by good, I mean healthier for you. And this is where I'm going to really start eating for health, and not so much just calories in, calories out. And the macros is a little bit on health, but still it's generally just making sure that you're eating enough calories, you're eating enough of the macros, but you're not going overboard. So, generally my rule of thumb is to eat the healthiest, stick to whole foods. And that is foods with single ingredients. And when I say generally stick to those foods, that doesn't mean you can never have foods that have multiple ingredients in it. But it's an easy way to think. Eggs have one ingredient, eggs. Potatoes have one ingredient, potatoes. Rice has one ingredient, rice. Those tend to be healthier foods than a cheeseburger. That the bread alone has many, many, many different kinds of ingredients in it. So I'm not saying never have a burger, but about 80% of your diet, if you can, should try to be whole foods. So it should be, lean sources of protein, meats, eggs, things like that. It should be, clean carbs and fats. And by clean, I mean rice, potatoes, those types of food, avocados. It should be, good vegetables and fruits, eating strawberries, eating apples, eating, your vegetables like your broccoli and those type things. If 80% of your diet sticks with those things, then you still have some calories to run through a drive-thru and grab a little bit of unhealthy food. And if you do that on occasion, then you're still going to be eating incredibly healthy. If you eat a little bit of dessert, but it's in that 20%, you eat a little bit of ice cream, you eat a little bit of cake, you don't want to be so restrictive on yourself that you can't live life. So by eating 80% of those healthy whole foods, then you can enjoy the a little bit more unhealthy foods on occasion and not feel like you need to feel guilty about it, because you're eating them in moderation. You're also going to have better long-standing results. If you eat on such a strict diet for so long, eventually you're going to burn yourself out, or what a lot of people do. I'm not saying everyone will. A lot of people will burn themselves out, and then they won't be able to stick to their diet, and everything goes back to unhealthy foods. So by letting yourself have some unhealthy foods, then you can be, and sticking to that 80-20, you can be extremely healthy for a long period of time. So don't think of unhealthy food as bad and horrible for you, and like the fact that you can't have it at all and forbidden food. No, not at all. Also listen to your body. So for me personally, my body feels the best when I eat mostly protein and then eat a little bit more fats and healthy fats, and then carbs next. So if I eat too many carbs and a little bit less fats and protein, I tend to feel bloated. I tend to feel hungry quicker. Whereas eating more proteins first and then eating fats being my next thing that I eat a lot of, and then being carbs being the thing I eat the least of, I tend to feel better. Now, just because I feel better that way doesn't mean you will. Maybe you feel better, keeping your protein, high enough to gain muscle, but kind of on the lower end of things, and eating a lot more carbs. Maybe you feel better. You feel fuller in that way. That is completely fine. Then stick with that. It basically comes down to take everything I've said in this podcast and use it to give yourself a frame of reference to think in, and then play with your numbers, play with the amounts, play with the ratios, and figure out what you like. Maybe you feel better eating 90% healthy foods, whole foods, and 10% unhealthy foods. Maybe you feel better doing, eating 25 or 30% unhealthy foods. It kind of depends. And also, what are you considering unhealthy and healthy? You got to figure out. So take all of that kind of with a grain of salt. You know your body best, so think through and listen to your body with how it feels, and don't be so zeroed in on, like going back to the fat diets. Don't be so zeroed in on certain foods, certain diets, certain timings, and that is why I'm losing weight. That is why I feel best. play with it. Figure out what you like. Figure out what feels best. Figure out what gives you the most energy, allows your body to perform in the best way. Also, this is the health from nutrition. Health is way, way, way broader than nutrition. So I won't go into it in this podcast, but health comes down to sleep. Health comes down to, like what we talked about in the other podcast, working out, resistance training, cardio, being mindful and kind of making sure you're not always thinking negatively, being healthy in regards to making sure you're constantly learning and challenging yourself. Cold exposure, saunas are ways to get healthy. There is so many things to think about when it comes to being healthy, and quite frankly, more than anybody would have time to do in one lifetime. So you got to figure out what makes you feel the healthiest, what makes you feel the best, and go from there. Also, keep in mind that I am not a nutritionist. All of this is just what my clients have seen has worked best for them, has felt best for them, what I have seen that this has felt best with. So do your own research. This is just to give you kind of the building blocks to go from there. But I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I hope it was helpful. Hopefully it will give you a good frame of reference as far as going forward in your nutrition, your diet. You have kind of a foundation to work off of. Remember, get the freedom, or feel like you have the freedom to mess with your diet a little bit, to figure out what works the best for you. But I hope to see you or hear from you on next week's podcast. I don't know what the topic will be yet, so sit tight to see what that would be, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.